other interest in any of these restrictions. And secondly, also because they feel that the minute you build up some kind of R&D infrastructure in the country itself, it's one way of also building up faith in the system, and in turn will actually contribute towards the will actually go towards encouraging the IT manpower. They also want to create education on cybersecurity issues and encourage some kind of symbiotic relationship with private and public agencies. Again, these are the legal, these are the only legal aspects that are really referred to under that particular heading in the policy document, which again surprised me because it goes back to the IT Act, and it doesn't actually come up with anything. So it's more or less like you've just spun out more documentation to confuse us all a bit more. It's true that they want to try and balance domestic laws with international standards, but again, there's absolutely no explanation as to how they're going to do that. Considering the fact that cyber culture in itself does not exist practically with us, because while if you go to a different country, they might view an illegal download as something horrible, for us it's pretty much the only way in which you get to watch like the next movie that just released. So it's this, and also they're looking at trying to come up with specialized units that will actually look at law enforcement. Now see, very quickly, I had a few queries which I'm leaving open, but I can basically tell you one thing. I am somebody who likes to work on issues with media and technology and free speech. And the thing is that the first thing that sort of always pops into my head the minute anyone says something about regulating the internet or regulating some kind of free space is privacy and surveillance. They both really worry me. Because I am not sure where you draw the line when it comes to actually going ahead and regulating a free space like this. I personally saw absolutely no references made to privacy or surveillance or any of these concerns. Not that they have to be mentioned in this explicit language in the policy, but I would expect a national policy on cybersecurity to at least reassure me of these concerns. In a sense, are they justifying intrusion and surveillance in the name of security and preventive measures? Maybe yes. It again depends on the perspective you choose. And who actually controls the cybersecurity issues? Is it the certain? Is what do we have? Are we happy with the nodal agency that we seem to have based on what the IT Act says? And of course, how does cybersecurity actually affect speech? I'm not going to really repeat myself also because I've run out of time, because we've all been waxing about Section 66A since the morning, and that's my favorite thing in the world to talk about sometimes. So really I can see its applicability there as well, and I think I'm just going to sort of leave with a lot of skepticism and a lot of doubts about why we actually have a policy like this. Because I'm not sure it's really answering any questions. I'm not sure it's reassuring me at all in any way. I would love to be corrected otherwise, but so far, no. So, thank you.
Thank you, Manojna. That was a very comprehensive coverage of the policy, the draft policy terms. Now we have again with us Vikram Asnani, and as DSCA would have it, he has finally come up with the final draft of the policy, which none of us yet had, right?
It's not an official document. It was shared by me with a media guy, not by the DIT. So I still don't say that it is a formal documentation. Just kept it for my records.
So you got it from media?
I got it from media. I'm sorry to say that.
That's privacy.
No, bravo for media, if I may say so. So now, Vikram was the proverbial optimist in the last session too. Let's see if he's going to give us a different take from what Manojna has said. And I would also be happy if Vikram can cover any difference that may have come about from the draft which is available online to the version which he has, with the disclaimer fully in place that it is nothing official.
Yeah. So, just to continue from where she left in terms of why this policy is needed, is that it kind of create an accountability within the system which probably the IT Act could not do it because of only naming nodal officers as certain. As I already earlier pointed out, that certain was an incident response mechanism only. Uh, to have this in place, to have this accountability put into the picture, wherein it is not only the government, it is also the private players who are party to this cyber security world. This policy, I think, is drafted. And if you look at the major IT that is being used, it's the private players who have 80% usage of the IT, and there has to be a mechanism beyond a law, a policy kind of a mechanism which takes care of those things. So if you see the airlines, it is all private except Air India. If you see the banking infrastructure, most of them are private. If you see the stock exchanges, I mean, yes, there are NSE and BSE which are taking care of it, but the brokerage houses are all private industries. So there is a lot of private players which are party towards the usage of cyber, and hence there is a need in terms of how a cyber security policy takes care in terms of usage in an ethical manner, usage in terms of a mechanism in which if you use it in a particular manner, there is accountability also ensured. So those are some of the comments that I have with respect to the policy. Yes, I am not too happy with the policy the way it has been drafted. It does not look like a policy. It looks like a more statements. I was discussing with ma'am just before this session is that the way it has been drafted is like you've written pointers which are important when you frame a policy, and those pointers are actually becoming a policy items. That is something that I have from the negative point of view is in terms of the policy. There are a lot of good aspects with respect to security of products, considering that a lot of issues we have discussed in the previous session also, that is being highlighted in this. There are good points with respect to creating a capacity building workforce, which takes care in terms of getting employed in the private industry, getting employed in the government space, and make ethical usage of the cyber systems. So that is the intention with respect to creating a capacity building of the of a security workforce in the country. That is there. Other points with respect to awareness and trainings are also mentioned with respect to the policy, which are good because these are mechanisms which are important for any kind of policy to happen. Tomorrow we'll have youngsters using cyber. I mean, there was a petition. There was a High Court order just recently on Facebook and Google asking them to provide information on how children should use internet. What is the policy of Facebook and Google? And they came out with a COPA of US law, and the High Court said it is not applicable to India. So those are things that is happening, and probably the idea behind this policy is to get those frameworks in place, get those high-level ideas in place wherein the overall structure can be defined. If I look into the new policy that I have in front of me, it talks about creating a secure ecosystem wherein they would designate a national nodal agency. The point of Chief Information Security Officers, as you pointed out, ma'am, is important because there has to be somebody who communicates from the security point of view only to the government with respect to how their operations are secured within the organization. So that is being captured. There's talked about a creating of an assurance framework wherein global best practices in information security and compliance are being promoted. What those are, it's not written in the final policy as I can see right now, but it's something good to look at. Strengthening the regulatory framework, it has also talked about that and it also talks about to enable, educate and facilitate awareness of the regulatory framework. So again, education and awareness is an important point of view, and so we do a lot of awareness with respect to law enforcement, we do a lot of awareness with respect to the judicial system, but somehow we have not done awareness with respect to the public prosecutors system. That is something that my feeling is that probably would also come when this policy comes into the picture, because that those are important people who actually present the case to the judicial system, and if they are not aware of the usage of this law, it would be difficult when it comes to the cyber world. They have talked about creating mechanisms for security threat, early warning, vulnerability management, and response to security threats, which I feel is of utmost importance. They've talked about information sharing and analysis center, which is utmost important that within the banking industry or within a telecom industry, the people, the CISOs should communicate regularly, should know what is the vulnerability coming in X bank and might turn up in the Y bank. So those information sharing and analysis centers is a very good step in the policy directions that they have spoken about. They talked about crisis management plan. They have talked about drills and exercises, which is something which is very important. That tomorrow, if something goes wrong, those drills will help us in terms of ensuring that we come up, we are resilient enough to provide operations immediately. So those are positive aspects of the policy. Protection and resilience of critical information infrastructure is already pointed out by ma'am, so I'll not touch upon that. They have talked about creation of a national critical information infrastructure protection center within that system. They have promoted research and development in cyber security. The idea is to promote indigenous development. It is not with the thought that you will not import external products. The idea is that you make India as a manufacturing hub with respect to IT, and your products are exported worldwide. So indigenous production with an acceptability in the world market is something that is promoted in the policy. I think
What about the technology best practices which you were just pointing out, Vikram? Don't you think that again they have gone back to freezing certain best practice norms?
yeah, I specifically didn't point it out to that because
Yes.
as I said, it's not a legal document in my hand, so I don't know whether that term they mentioned ISO 27001 again, but not too sure whether it will still continue. So that is the reason I don't want to mention that. But yes, best practices I think is important with respect to, as it creates a basic hygiene environment within the industry or within an organization. Okay, there are and we all know, I mean, coming from that security background, if you have those hygiene in place, there is 80% chances that you are secure. It's those 0-day vulnerabilities which actually impact you the most, and you cannot do anything about it. It's just that how quickly you are able to patch up your system, how quickly you are able to bring back your system if you're down, is something that you need to look at. That's something that I have to say.
Vikram has finished nearly 10 minutes ahead of his timeline. So if anybody wants to throw any questions at him, so that he will give him
Yes, ma'am.
an extra 15 minutes to leave a little early if required. So thank you.
Yeah.
What do you think that they're not covering ethical issues as such, and they're mostly concerned about the state only and not about the individuals? When we are talking about cyber security, it is the individual which is using the computer. If I'm sitting in front of the laptop, it's me who's using it. My data might be infringed, and the policy actually does not talk about the individual.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, though in the vision statement they talk about government, industry, and citizens, in the draft statement, in the pointers that we are seeing, I mean, it does not talk about anything about except awareness to the citizens. So that is a good point that you
When we
made.
talk about the ethical issues, it's when I am a hacker, it's the individual who's infringing an individual's data. So the policy should basically talk about the individual aspect of ethical issues and regulatory, how the regulation will affect the individuals. And they're talking most about the state only.
Whenever there is a breach, or whenever there is a hacking kind of an incident that is happening, there is always a law which is there. A policy will not overrule the law. A policy is there to support the law, right? And so those cases that you are pointing out will be covered specifically in the IT Act or in the other legislations which are there.
But sir, in the IT Act also, as this Facebook issue comes up, and when we're talking about using Facebook, it's not only Facebook which is tracking our data, it's actually the other websites related to Facebook, just like some website called Tubong. It is tracking my data, whatever I'm using on that web browser.
Yeah, it is only tracking your data because in your privacy policy you have allowed that. if you go and see the Facebook privacy policy, it's in tremendous detail. I know people will do not like to spend time on that, but it's actually you have allowed that. That is why it is going to Zabong.com.
So that way it comes in the policy only, and the ID Act will not come to the picture in that case.
No, I'm just saying that if there is an incident that is happening, if there is a breach that is happening, then the law will take care of it.
Unless there's a disclaimer, it's subject to solicitation. No?
Yes.
I have an observation actually. It's not a question, but it's just a comment. I feel the basic gap always in this economy is that the government is unable to keep pace with the private sector. And in a country where the growth is being propelled by private sector, you cannot afford to move out in the morning. So that is the biggest gap. Either the government is absolutely silent, contemplating, deliberating on the policy, or it suddenly comes out with a policy. Right? Like you spoke of the DOT guidelines which came out on the security issues, or you spoke of the CCI certifications which suddenly came out with. For a long time there is this deliberation, and you saw how the corporates like us reacted to it. The DOT guidelines on security were absolutely unacceptable. I mean, I don't want to talk on behalf of an organization, I'm talking subjectively here. But it is ridiculous for a corporate to then keep pace, you know. So it is unfair. And if you say that the government understands the corporate dynamics, I completely deny that. I don't think it understands it. If it would understand it, it would be more proactive than always being reactive.
No, I agree. This is a reactive step. I agree completely on that. This is a reactive step and probably should have come a lot earlier than it is now. I mean, if you see, it's 2011 when the draft was there. We are in 2013, mid of 2013. The final policy is about, it's just reached there. So yes, I mean, it's a reactive policy, and I agree that. And technology is moving in a very fast pace, which I would say the industry is also not able to cope with. I mean, so government is little far-fetched. Industry is not able to cope up with it. So that's the base in which technology is moving.
Because if you also see, that's the basic difference between when you see the China growth and the India growth. China growth is all government propelled. It is not government. Here it is all private sector.
Agreed.
So if you cannot take care of the interest of the people who are propelling your growth, I mean, business is here to make profit, right? You set us the limit, you tell us the limits on how we can operate, we operate within the limits. But if you do not talk of the limits and you just come up with ad hoc policies, then it is very difficult to do business.
No, I know a couple of my Chinese colleagues there. It's a little different if you compare China and India. It's mainly because of the democratic nature of the country. That is the only reason why China has gone way ahead as compared to India. That is something my perception. But the democratic nature of India is, allows people to comment, allows people to react, and it's good for a long range. If I have to see the issues at the long range, it's good that a discussion happens in India, unlike China, wherein things are pushed onto the system. So that is what I say.
You stopped with just allowing to comment
The
and allowing.
implementation.
Exactly. You did not touch upon whether the government actually takes those comments. So I have you could put it as a question or an observation or a comment on this, Vikram. See, we first get the Act, right, in 2000. Then we get an amendment to the Act. Then we get guidelines to that. You know, you had placed a lot of emphasis on security best practices. You know, that is part of both the Act as well as the guidelines. And now you come out with a policy. Isn't it rather redundant one? Complicated? It could be contradictory in some instances probably. And I would also like to tie in with the query that the lady at the back had raised, that this doesn't address individuals, whereas it addresses the industry. When you're talking about a policy, like you rightly pointed out, it doesn't carry a statutory thing. So you would probably put in a policy on issues which you cannot supervise or enforce implementation of. And that which you can enforce implementation of, you will make it part of the Act, or the guidelines which by default are part of the Act. Why would they come out with a third level and absolutely vague policy again for industry? And I'm throwing it out to the panel as such. Why a policy again, which is again broad-based and vague for industry, which is anyway governed by the provisions of the Act and the guidelines. You know, and if it was intended for the legislators to know what IT is all about or what enactments ought to be about, then should it not have preceded the Act?
Somebody delayed their job.
It's a difficult one to answer, but I agree that there are aspects of the best practices which are covered in the IT Act and the rules, and I really need to look at it whether they have tried to ensure that there is a consistency within all three of the documents. That is something that I would see, and probably that's something that I'm looking at also right now. So that is one aspect of it. When it comes to the policy, why it is coming now, whether it is late in the day or whatever you want to say, is that I really don't have answers to that. But I'll still say that it's still a positive step. It's still a step which is to be there. You can't run a system without a thought process behind it. Internet, I mean, we are seeing a lot of debates around the world on regulating an internet, on ICANN issues and other aspects of it, and they are evolved, because internet, when it was created, it was not created for a closed society. It is an open environment where anybody and everybody can access it, right? It is the misuse of those internet. It is how internet has grown substantially, that there is now a realization that we should have some laws or some policy in place, so that, I mean, there is in some way we can control things which are going beyond individual control or a country's control. And that is, I guess, is the thought process when companies or a government create a policy. If you look into any enterprise right now, they will have definitely a policy in place, and that is something probably I am looking at from the government side. So if they are operating a cyberspace, if they are responsible, if they are accountable for a cyberspace, there has to be a policy behind the cyberspace. Not too sure why it came at this point of time, whether it is late or not, something that I cannot answer, but yes, it is there, better late than never.
But see, if you liken the analogy, if you liken the policy to a thought process, then in this particular situation, the thought process just the action of the act itself preceded the thought process. So then, what was when the thought process was needed, nobody disclosed it. So it's almost like an afterthought.
So as a corollary, then, do we say that the Act was a thoughtless process?
Exactly. Maybe.
You will call that.
Not so, Ms. Martin.
The policy came after the Act, so it appears as if